I'm sorry, this was not exactly edited at the beginning of the tape. I'm not even using tape. I wanted to talk to everybody a little bit about why I support the Tea Party economically. And this was kind of brought home to me by a liberal friend of mine who criticized me for not criticizing Ronald Reagan driving up the debt. Now, of course, the truth is that Ronald Reagan's administration did drive up the debt. It had deficits every year. And I could go into a whole situational dissertation on how Reagan was so desirous of getting tax cuts to stimulate the economy from the supply side that he was willing to give the Democrats their tax increases, their spending increases, I should say. Not their tax, because he would cut taxes, but let the Democrats have their spending increases in order to get the tax cuts. But really, that's kind of all old news. We can't do anything about that now. But let me just address it briefly compared to what we see going on today. First, in 1984, the perception about the debt was not what it now is. And that's because the private sector was creating new wealth fast enough for the federal government to tax it at reasonable rates and have cash on hand to pay the bondholders. That is no longer the case. Just as a sideline, growth is the creation of new wealth by people who understand how the debt money system works. Now, there's a lot to say about whether the debt money system and the Federal Reserve Bank are good or evil and what that's made possible. But in the modern world of the debt money system, when people are free, you're going to have capitalism based on the debt money system. Pure and simple, that's how it will work. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but the situation, of course, has changed since 1984. The debt has been spun out of control, and it is growing too fast for the wealth creators to deal with it. The fact that my friends on the left always seem to ignore it is that it is wealth creation, the bringing into existence of new wealth in the debt money system, that is the engine that makes all of Western civilization go. And this even includes our benefits, Social Security and the other sacred cows that America has come to depend on. They all require constant growth in order to give the federal government something to tax at reasonable rates. But the sidebar to this is that the debt is now so far out of control that the welfare state jet plane has had the engine flame out and it is headed straight for the side of the mountain. Now you guys look at this and do not see the mountain. You think we can go on this indefinitely. You think we can go on like this without any limit. And indeed, we have basically created a society in which we believe the federal government has no limits on its power or its ability to spend and borrow. And we have neglected to tell the people the truth about what the results will be of borrowing without limit and its effect on the value of the dollar. That said, it is the perception by wealth creators that the current administration has them in the crosshairs that is keeping so much wealth from going into real wealth creation based on goods and services. And as a result, beside the lack of domestic industrial activity, the federal government is printing money to the tune of $85 billion a month to put into the banks, so that capital will be available to investors and speculators to buy stock on margin. Which is why the stock market is over 15,000 while the rest of the economy is dismal. Quantitative easing is a liberal political solution to an economic problem. Now, whenever you have a liberal political solution being put on an economic problem, you can bet that it is going to explode in your face. These never work in the long term because bubbles are produced. It happened with the housing bubble when they passed the Community Reinvestment Act and told the banks that they were going to lend money to people who couldn't afford the loans. It is an illusion, and it produces the temptation to gamble as it did in the housing market when the lending institutions started trying to figure out ways to make something that was worthless have some value. The truth is that borrowing without limit to fuel federal spending without limit is undermining the currency. That is why you hear conservatives being such budget hawks. They see the consequences of continuing the welfare state and expanding it. The truth is, I wish it didn't have to be this way. I really do, because I want my benefits. I want my Social Security. I want my Medicare. Hell, I'm 61. But the truth is, there is no way to fix this anymore without hurting millions and millions of people. Let me repeat that. The truth is, there is no way to fix this without hurting millions and millions of people. Oh, how I wish this were not the case. But instead of spending your time bellyaching about what horrible people those Republicans are, maybe, just maybe, you ought to look real hard in the mirror and read Liberal Fascism by Jonah Goldberg and find out where your side has been in the last 100 years. Look hard at the numbers, because they don't lie. And study the relationship between the amount of federal debt and the value of the dollar. Unless and until we can get you guys to own up to, number one, the problem is the spending, and number two, it was the progressive philosophy that exploded it, we are not going to do what must be done to give this republic a chance to survive another century. Now, we may have something here called the United States of America, but it will not be the republic that we grew up with. The dollar is not going to make it. We borrow over 40% of what we spend. That means that tax receipts only give us 60% of it. That means that borrowing is 2/3 of revenue. Think of what that would mean in your own budget at home if you were borrowing 2/3 of what you were making. This is suicidal. And the super rich cannot be taxed enough to make up the difference, because doing that will kill whatever's left of this economy. You know, you need the rich to keep creating wealth. Remember, they are creating it out of nothing. They're not stealing it from the middle class. They're not defrauding it from the poor. They are creating it. That's what growth is. The reason you have whatever you have and whatever you want anytime you want it is because rich people who own corporations have turned these corporations into gigantic wealth creation machines. And that's what enables everything to be on the market in abundance all the time. You need the rich to keep creating wealth so you can tax it, so you can have your social welfare programs. There's a limit to how much fleecing they will accept. The rich, whether we like it or not, the rich are the economy. Face up to it. Find the balance, but first cut the spending. If the federal government spends a dime on it, it has to be cut. Everything. I agree it will suck, but it's better than sending the population of this planet into a centuries-long dark age, resulting from a worldwide debt money collapse. Think of it like global warming. You guys see something you think is happening, and you want concrete action taken right now to avert it. Now, you guys have no way to prove global warming. There's a consensus, but scientific consensus is enough, seems to be enough for you, even though science isn't based on consensus. Science is based on fact. And there's abundant evidence that warming has stopped since 1998. Don't matter to you. As far as you know, it's global warming, and you want action taken right now at a governmental level to interfere with the economy. Something that the federal government, by the way, has no authority to do under its constitution. Don't matter to you. Constitutionality be damned. The problem is too severe. Well, we see the numbers going a certain way on the debt, and we want something done right now to avert it. Unlike global warming, The numbers are exploding exponentially since 2008, and the freight train is right in our collective face. And these numbers do not require consensus. Everyone can plainly see $17 trillion and adding another $1 trillion a year in deficit to the debt is certainly not helping. Now, you know what? Maybe it may be true that the next year we'll only have $618 billion in deficit. Well, guess what? We can't have that. We can't have any more deficits ever. Of course, there's no political will to get to that point. It is across the board that spending must be cut. Everything, including Social Security and Medicare and the military. You see, the entitlements are not discretionary spending. The ranks of retirees are growing as the boomers retire, and they're living longer thanks to modern medicine, which, by the way, is profit motive driven. But you put all of that together, and I'm sorry, but national survival has to come ahead of looking to the federal government for benefits. The only thing that will give us a chance to keep the dollar from total collapse and save us from being the Weimar Republic on steroids is to admit that the FDR model no longer works because the demographics on which it is based no longer exist. And get a plan in place that starts greatly reducing the public's dependence on Washington. But instead, we see the government employing people to go out there and recruit people for food stamps. And not poor ones all the time either. This is utter madness. It's like you'd rather see the plane hit the mountain while denying that the mountain is there, rather than admit that the mountain is a bad option and try to land the plane in the river. Either way, it is going down, but the river is a better option. The passengers will have a chance to survive the impact. And by the way, I want to say this, we here on the right, as you may have noticed, do not hold the Republicans guiltless on our side. There's a lot more things I could talk about how the Republicans are letting this country down. But they pale in comparison to the engineering of the demolition of this republic, the dismantling of the free market republic that gave us everything we have. That is going on the Democrat side of the aisle. But we do blame the Republicans for going along with this idea of massive spending that wasn't yet created and has yet to be borrowed and still has to be borrowed to try and make America fit the vision of the progressive movement. Because the progressive movement is the poison. It's a poison pill. Whatever good intentions you might believe it has, however noble its ideals may sound, they have to be imposed through coercion, and their long-range effect is extremely detrimental to the survival of a free republic. So, having said all that, I may do a couple of more of these. I fully expect to be hearing from you. I know that a lot of the people that disapprove of what I have been advocating, I don't know, you look at me as some kind of a monster or whatever. See, I don't look at liberals and progressives as bad people. I just don't think you've thought everything through. It greatly bothers me that progressives and liberals, especially from what I see on Facebook, seem to think of conservatives as some kind of despicable people, rather than people who have a different set of ideas that maybe don't sound as appetizing for general consumption. But the fact of the matter is, the numbers are what they are. We cannot continue to spend the way we've been spending, and everything has to be cut. And I've got another dissertation that I'll try to get on here about why the money system is the way it is, and how understanding what the money system is really is the key to understanding why progressivism cannot work. Thanks, guys. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to old Mikey.